My name is Bethany, and I am 36 years old. I was born into a poor family, where life was never easy and every day felt like a fight for survival. My earliest memories are filled with the sound of my mother's tired sighs and the silence of a father who would never come home again. My father died when I was only 10 years old, and from that day forward, the world became a much colder place. My mother tried to carry the weight of both parents, but the burden was heavy. She worked from dawn until night, scrubbing floors, washing clothes, and cooking for others just to earn a few coins. Her hands were cracked, her back bent, and her eyes carried a sadness she never spoke about. Still, she never gave up. She would come home, smile at me through her exhaustion, and whisper, "You are my strong girl." I didn't feel strong at all. I felt small and tired. But for her sake, I forced myself to smile back. When I turned 13, I knew I could no longer sit by and watch her struggle alone. I began working wherever I could, cleaning houses, washing dishes, carrying heavy buckets of water. Every coin I earned I placed into my mother's hand. She always kissed my forehead and told me she was proud. Those moments gave me a little strength, even as my body ached with exhaustion. But one day, everything I feared came true. My mother became ill. She could no longer walk, her breath grew shallow, and her strength slipped away day by day. We had no money for a doctor, and no one came to help us. I sat by her side, holding her thin hand, begging her to stay. She smiled at me, even as the light faded from her eyes, and whispered, "Don't be sad. You are strong." That night, she died in her sleep, in my arms. I felt something inside me break. The world grew empty. My heart carried a weight heavier than I had ever known. At 13, I was truly alone. No family. No friends. No home that felt alive anymore. But I remembered my mother's last words. I promised myself I would never give up, no matter how hard the world became. Years passed, and by 23, I found work as a security guard at a wealthy family's mansion. It was steady work, though it paid little. The owners were the Collins family, kind people who seemed to live in a different world from mine. Mrs. Collins often brought me tea and asked me about my day. Her kindness reminded me of my mother. Mr. Collins was always busy, tied to his phone and business calls, and hardly ever spoke. Their son, barely 20, seemed angry at the world, never greeting me, his eyes full of shadows I didn't understand. Still, I was grateful. I had a job, a small room, and food to eat. For once, I thought maybe life was starting to settle. But fate has a cruel way of breaking fragile peace. One night, as I stood by the gate, police cars came roaring down the street, lights flashing, sirens screaming. They stormed past me, shouting, guns raised, and crashed through the doors of the house. I froze, too stunned to move. Moments later, the screams stopped, replaced by a chilling silence. Then, an officer stepped outside, his face pale, and suddenly they were surrounding me. The Collins family was dead. All of them. Their bodies lay inside, lifeless and soaked in blood. I felt sick, unable to breathe. Before I could speak, rough hands grabbed me, twisted my arms, and snapped cold metal handcuffs around my wrists. "You're the only one here," they said. "No cameras. No witnesses." I begged them to listen. I told them Mrs. Collins had been kind to me, that I had no reason, no weapon, no hate in my heart. But they didn't believe me. Blood had been found on my hands, blood I couldn't explain, blood that wasn't mine. They searched my room, found nothing, yet insisted I was guilty. The case was closed quickly. Too quickly. I was assigned a lawyer from the state, a man who barely spoke to me, who looked bored during my trial. The judge hardly lifted his eyes. I barely had a chance to defend myself before I heard the words that shattered my soul. Guilty. Life in prison. The world tilted, and I collapsed to the courtroom floor. I was only 23. No one cried for me. No one shouted in my defense. No one cared. Prison became my world. Cold, gray, silent. My cell was small, one bed, one toilet, one heavy metal door. Days melted into weeks, weeks into years. Each morning we lined up for food that tasted like ash. Each night I cried into my pillow, careful that no one saw. Slowly, I stopped counting the days. My heart grew numb. But then, after 12 long years, hope returned in the most unexpected way. A hidden video was discovered, an old neighbor's security camera that had been forgotten for years. On it, a shadowy figure could be seen near the Collins house on the night of the murders. That single clue reopened the case. My new lawyer worked tirelessly, digging through the evidence, demanding new tests. For months, I lived between fear and fragile hope. Then came the moment I had dreamed of. DNA from the crime scene matched someone else. Not me. It belonged to a friend of the Collins' son, a young man with a history of drugs and debt. He had vanished after that night, changed his name, and disappeared into another city. For 12 years, I had rotted in a cell while the real murderer lived free. Finally, the doors opened, and I stepped outside as a free woman. But freedom was not as sweet as I had imagined. I had no family waiting, no friends, no home. The world had moved on without me. I wandered the streets, empty-handed, my heart heavy. Hunger gnawed at me until I stumbled upon a small bakery. Inside, a kind woman looked up as I whispered, "Please, I'm hungry. I have no money." For a moment, she studied me, and then she handed me a piece of bread and water. That simple act of kindness lit a spark inside me. I thanked her and walked to a park, searching for work. Most people turned me away, some ignored me, but then an old man cleaning the park called me over. "You can help," he said, handing me a broom. That day, I swept paths beside him. He gave me a sandwich and a few coins. "You work hard," he said. "Come again tomorrow." And so I did. Day after day, I returned. Slowly, the old man introduced me to a small group of people who helped one another, people who had known pain, rejection, and hardship. For the first time in years, I found community. With their help, I found a small job, then a place to live. I stumbled many times, afraid, uncertain, scarred by my past, but I never stopped trying. Life taught me that darkness can last for years, crushing you beneath its weight. But even in the deepest night, a spark of hope can survive. And when kindness meets that spark, it can grow into a flame strong enough to guide you forward. I am Bethany. My life has been broken, but not destroyed. And as long as I breathe, I will never give up. If you were moved by my story, please like, comment, share, and subscribe.